is Christina Liles. My husband and I, Craig Liles, had a baby on March 11th, 2008. Our second daughter named Holli Marie Liles, and she was born with a broken right clavicle, also known as your collarbone here. And we didn't know that anything was wrong at first. The pediatrician came to our room after being in the hospital for a few hours and said that it was more than likely broken and that they were going to take her for an x-ray. So they went ahead and took her, and we never heard anything back from the pediatrician, and we were almost getting ready to go home, and they said a nurse let it slip, but usually we're really gentle with babies with broken right clavicles or their collarbones. And so we were like, wait, what happened? We were getting ready to leave the hospital, and we find out that suddenly our daughter's collarbone is broken. So they said, yeah, here's the x-ray report, take her to your pediatrician whenever you go and let them know and things like that. So she also was born with jaundice. So we had to take her to a pediatrician when she was 2 days old. And they they told us that based on the report from the initial pediatrician in the hospital, to go ahead and take her to therapy, a physical therapist. So we took her at about a week old to a physical therapist, and they said there's no muscle damage or nerve damage because she was gripping my hand and she was moving her hands perfectly fine. So we breathed a really big sigh of relief as parents. So we were just ecstatic about that, and we thought, okay, this is going to just go away on its own. That's what everybody was saying. So we took her for her 2-week checkup a few weeks later, and they said that the bone is actually healing, and you could actually feel a knot in her bones, and it was actually healing, which is a good sign, except it's supposed to heal this way, and hers did this. It went on top of each other, and eventually the top bone would protrude out through her skin, so that she would probably A, need to either have the bone rebroken, or B, have to have surgery, and they would break it again during surgery and fuse it back together. So we weren't ecstatic anymore. We were terrified, and the first thing that we could do was I called my mother in tears, bawling my eyes off. We're going to have surgery on our baby girl. So, and she was only 2 weeks old. So I was terrified, and we decided to go ahead and have her baby dedication at church, which we did it with our other daughter, and we're totally excited about it. And after Pastor Frankie finished doing the baby dedication, I leaned over to him and I said, can you pray for her collarbone as well? Because, he knew the situation that it was broken. So he said sure, and he prayed over it, and everybody laid hands on her that was on stage with us, and everybody in the audience raised their hands, and you could feel the power of God in that room on our one daughter, our beautiful miracle in our hands. And went to her orthopedic surgeon the very next day at about 8:30 in the morning, and he did x-rays and said, based on her last x-ray, it wasn't looking good, and that, he probably would want to do surgery. So he said, just brace yourself for that. So I said, okay. So he went out of the room after having the x-rays done, and he came back, and he had this really just puzzled look on his face and said, can I examine her? Have you gotten her dressed? And I said, no, sure. So I put her on the table, and he kind of felt her left collarbone and felt her right collarbone and pulled her hands up and was, mashing on them. And she wasn't yelling in any pain or anything. So I thought, that's a good sign, but he's examining her, so that's not too good of a sign. So he said something magical happened. And I was like, okay, is this a riddle or something? And he says, I've never seen this happen in my life. Not only did the bone protrude or realign itself and fuse back together, but on the x-rays you can't even tell it was ever broken. And so he said for the bones that were this way to not only stretch back out and go the right way, but to never even have a crack in there and look like she was a perfectly healthy baby is very rare. And I said, oh, magic has nothing to do with it. I know why it happened. And he just kind of, smirked at me, and I smirked back at him, and he said, give her, a few more weeks just to be sure and let it heal, and she'll be good as new, and you'll never have to think about it again. And that was pretty much it. Hi everyone, this is Holli Marie Liles, born March 11th, 2008, 7 pounds, 6 ounces, and 20 inches long. With a clean bill of health today.